Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, it's going to be a bit more of an informal one. I want to talk about all of the development activities that are happening in the Vancouver area, how this is affecting supply today and how it's affecting the real estate market as a whole. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hasan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver. I make these educational videos to help you in your buying or selling journey. Without wasting any time, let's get started. So there's been some big news in the development scene here in Vancouver over the last month or so. A lot of it is going to be applicable to you or pertain to you because they're of such magnitude. And the first one would be the approval of the Broadway Plan. Now, the Broadway Plan is basically a development plan that runs along Broadway, right where they're building the Broadway subway project. So the Broadway subway project, they're putting about $2 or $3 billion last time I checked into this project, and now the Broadway Plan is a development plan that's going to run right along Broadway from Clark to Vine, so right into Kitsilano. The reason why this is such a big deal, it's a 30-year plan, but the reason why it's such a big deal is it basically rezones areas at subway stops for 40-story towers and in shoulder areas which are not right at the stops to 20-story towers. The premise behind it is if they're going to spend billions of dollars on this subway, they needed to meet that with obviously bringing the people and the amenities to the area as well. The other reason this is such big news is the amount of opposition. Now, I've spoken about it on my channel here for sure is, you know, especially as you head west in Vancouver, there tends to be a lot of outcry or a lot of public opposition to high-rise development, especially in the Kitsilano area, etc. I see both sides of it. You know, a lot of the opposition, they cite things such as decreasing views, additional traffic. So some things that are relevant concerns, but, you know, at the same time, I think we have to, at this point, step back from the views perspective and focus on supplying the right amount of housing for the amount of new Canadians that are coming, but more importantly for all the existing Canadians that are here that are struggling with housing choices. If you follow my channel, you've seen the last video. One of the last videos I created was on this rental housing crisis, not enough units. So this Broadway plan, it supports that development. Not going to happen overnight. It's a 30-year plan. I, for one, am excited about it. I've lived in the Vancouver area pretty much my whole life. I came here when I was 5 years old from Victoria, so I feel as if I've lived here my whole life. I have a lot of memories living in Richmond and driving along Granville Street towards downtown Vancouver, and you know, never having anything block the view as well. So I've appreciated the views that we have here in Vancouver. At the same time, I think we're very fortunate that if we're looking for mountain views, ocean views, river views, city views, Stanley Park views, any type of views, we can drive a short distance and we can get there. With the Broadway plan, now what may happen is some people may not be able to step outside their front door and be able to appreciate those views from their front door. The second thing I want to mention really quickly is what's called the Vancouver Plan. Now, this is at more of an infancy stage, but the Vancouver Plan, it's a little bit different in that it's a plan for the entire city, which doesn't involve rezoning or anything like that at this point. But to keep things brief, what the Vancouver Plan is suggesting is a new hub for the city of Vancouver surrounding around the Oak Ridge Mall area where there's already heavy construction happening. A lot of towers are coming up. So basically the Vancouver Plan is calling for that to become a new hub for the city, and as you move away from that core, you would have low-rise development and more units coming to the city that way as well. So what's happening in terms of existing developments or pre-sales in the city right now? So the first thing to mention very quickly is construction costs have been increased significantly. And what's happening for a lot of developers now, especially the larger developers, they're viewing the market, they're seeing interest rates rise, they're seeing buyer demand fall, they're seeing construction costs go up, and it's starting to no longer be feasible to move forward on projects. So whether they are in the middle of construction, they're in pre-sale stage, a lot of developers are choosing to hold off now because it doesn't make sense for them to incur increased costs and sell at a lower amount. So we're seeing a couple things. We're seeing some of the larger developers who perhaps they own a lot of land around the city, they're cash heavy, and they don't necessarily need to sell at this current moment. They're holding off, and as you can probably see, this is going to cause some strain on supply. So it's a bit of a cycle because these developers rely on the city to push their applications through to make it feasible for them in terms of FSR and how much they're able to build, how many units, how much space they're able to use. But that process, sending it through the city, has historically taken such a long time as well. So the developers are like, why should we go through this process right now when the conditions are, unfavorable for us to do so? But the issue this is going to cause is, again, that cycle of supply and demand. And now, if supply happens to decrease moving forward, what's that going to do for demand? It's going to bring demand back up. So the developers, they hold, of course, a lot of power in the city. That's why I think it's so important that the city and developers, they work hand in hand. They are partners. They both need each other to move the needle forward. I don't really like to hear sentiment against developers, against the city. I think everyone just needs to work together to make it happen, to bring the units that we need into the city. So that's the first thing we're seeing, is some delays on projects that are currently in play. The other thing we're seeing, pretty unique, I hadn't seen it before until the last 2 or 3 months, is in disclosure statements for pre-sales. And I do a whole video on pre-sale, which I'm going to link here. It's a really popular video. There's a lot of good advice there. So I think you should take a look if you're considering pre-sale. But within disclosure statements, some of them are now saying that if construction costs go up by a certain percentage, the developer can change the sale price on you at completion time. This is significant because you may go for a firm approval for your mortgage before completion. You may not even be aware of the clause. Some of these disclosure statements are 100 to 200 to 250 pages. So watch for that. If you're in the pre-sale market right now, watch for that clause because you don't want to enter into a situation where you think you're paying $700,000 for a unit, and come completion time, you're actually paying closer to $800,000. So that's the second thing we're seeing. Developers, they need to protect themselves too, because if their costs go significantly up, you'd be surprised. You may think the margins are ridiculously massive on these projects, but you also have to factor in the level of risk that the developers are taking on by moving forward with these projects. And again, these are projects and units that the city and ourselves as residents of the city desperately need. Lastly, there's been some additional proposals now for developments in downtown Vancouver specifically, so all along Pacific between Smythe and Howe, I want to say. There's a development proposal being put forth for 4 towers in its early stages there. BOSA just confirmed they're going to be doing in the West End about 450 rental units. So with the crunch, the rental housing crunch, I'm noticing that rental developments are becoming a little bit more favorable in the eyes of developers. I don't think they'll ever take the place of market housing or units that they can actually sell. But I know a few years back, a lot of developers, they wouldn't touch any properties that had a rental only zoning to them, but now I think there's a lot more developers that are open-minded to that, just based on the state of where the rental market is. So there you have it, guys. A lot of news on the development scene in Vancouver. I'll be sure to keep you posted in future videos what happens with the outcomes on some of the planned developments. Guys, if you learned anything from this video, I'd love it if you could hit the like button and consider subscribing. What that does is it sends the video out to more people so they can learn from it as well. If you're in the Lower Mainland area and you wanted some real estate help from me, all my contact info is below. Reach out to me. I'd love to help you out. But thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.